thought I could escape, but it was not possible.
But I won't bother you too long.
No,
Can you talk a little bit for...
yes, I can talk. I'm talking like this, and I'm gonna tell you a story of my film, or perhaps not. Maybe I'm gonna answer something else.
Come all you fair and tender girls that flourish in your prime. Beware, beware, keep your garden fair. Let no man steal your time.
Obviously, the films that I write myself are films that could not have been done by anyone else, and they are, to some degree, more precious to me. But yet, still, working on this particular movie from Thomas Hardy, I felt strongly related to somehow. I felt that the writing of him was so rich and so captivating that it was incredibly inspiring. I felt there was an opportunity to make some characters that would stay alive and stay with me and become very lively on screen. And I think that maybe is the finest deed as a filmmaker, to create life on screen that stays with you. That's what I felt from reading the book and reading the script. It stayed with me from weeks and months after, which is why I decided to go for it. But it is very different. It is very, very strange not to be the author. I've been making my own movies for 30 years now, since I was 16. And making someone else's work is a more humble experience. It's more like an exploration of someone else's world than it's a show of your own, a variety of your own emotions.
You've never seen yourself through a man's eyes. It's like not being able to think.
I want, very much, to protect you for the rest of your life. I'm not going to tell stories just to please you. You can be sure of that.
What I experienced from making this film is that there is a huge difference between Danish and English culture. And I think the reason they asked me to do it, one of the reasons, is that I come from outside, so I'm not carrying the burden of the cultural heritage that Thomas Hardy represents. I could bring a naive and fresh perspective to some degree. I think they wanted me to dust off the genre a little bit. And that was difficult. In moments I found myself covered in dust myself instead. The British culture is very, very civilized, and to some degree very chaste. And we have a directness in Scandinavia that they don't in English culture. So there was definitely a cultural difference. But having said all that, I found that in Thomas Hardy's writing, there's a similarity with Scandinavian culture. There's a cruelty in the way he treats fate, the way he takes these three men and destroys them. One of them survives, but the others are being trashed completely. It's done with an elegancy and a brutality that combines the two continents a little bit, or that combines England and Scandinavian literature. Also, I felt strongly related to the theme of being an individual outside a community. She's a rebel. She's against her time. She's against her surroundings. And that's a theme I've been playing with in my previous work as well. But first and foremost, she's a moving character. She moves me. The duality, the conflict between wanting to be so strong and yet still trying to devote to a man, which is a very vulnerable deed, is very moving, I think. And I guess that little thing, that sense of vulnerability, is what I'm pursuing throughout the film in all the characters.
For when your time it is past and gone, you'll care no more for you. That all the world may plainly see.
To some degree, I always just want to shoot on film. It breathes differently, and it encourages me to make decisions because you can't afford just shooting. But it's so much against the system to shoot on film now. It's so much trouble, and it's so expensive. On this particular movie, we convinced the producers because all the good period dramas that have been shot over the last 15 years has been shot on film, and that convinced him. And the decision of shooting this on film and going to the Hardy Land, going on location, shooting that existing light, I think really was fruitful, and I'm happy we did that. But to some degree, I invented the digital,
That's also one.
the digital wave. Von Trier and myself had this movement called Dogma, and it was ironic because one of our rules, we were working under these 10 commandments. One of the commandments was implied that you have to shoot 35 Academy. And then we ended up shooting on a camera smaller than yours because we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford shooting on 35. So we just agreed, okay, we'll shoot it on digital cameras and then end on 35mm, which I think is a way of working around rules, almost Catholic way of working with dogmas. And ironically, we became sort of the frontier of the digital wave. Anthony Mandel, who shot my film Festen, and myself decided then to go with that métier and with the digital and use the fact that it was digital, go very low resolution, so it became very grainy and stuff. It was fun.
Hvordan har du det?
Jeg har det godt.
Ja, så. Ja. Er du sikker? Jeg kan godt sætte det her kraftedeme at sige dig noget.
Kom nu, gider det køre lidt hurtigere?
Hold nu ud med dig, mand! Jeg stopper her og håber, vi må få en dejlig fest sammen alle sammen. Lad os så få noget at spise, ikke?
Det er min kæreste.
Welcome. Nice to see you back.
Nej, ham har du ikke mødt før. Det var en anden.
Tager noget. Ikke så godt, når man taber noget.
Hold! Må jeg introducere for min barndomsven, Christian?
Filmmaking is a very conservative art form, which I think is very natural because it's so complicated. It's so difficult to make a film, and it's very, very difficult to make a good film. So people easily get habits and routines and try to find the safe way through it because it's a very complicated process. I guess Dogma was a smack in the face of movie making of that time. It was a revolt against the conventions in filmmaking. But very quickly it became fashion and became a style itself, ironically, because we tried to avoid style. We tried to create purity and nakedness. But yes, I think it made a huge impact, and I don't know if I can see any traces of it more. I can tell that from my own point of view, I'm to some degree still doing the same thing. I'm looking for purity. That's what we were looking for. We tried to cleanse the distance between ourselves and the character. I know, I can agree that there's a long way from Festen to Far From the Madding Crowd, but in some perspective there's not. I've always tried to get under the skin of these people and make as naked and pure expression as possible. If I was doing a dogma film again now, it would look like an old dress, it would look like a style. And so to some degree, the celebration of our films in Cannes in '98, I think, was the beginning of the end.
Hvad var det, der skete? Hvad siger du? Hvad?
Det er din sidste bevægelse, din far.
Du skal ikke sige noget om min familie, er du med? Hvor du er så forrådende. Hvad nu, hvis jeg rejste mig op i stedet for at være sat på rundt dig?
I've made another movie which I'm editing now, and I'm in sound post-production, called The Commune, which is about the house I grew up in with half-naked academics right north of Copenhagen. I grew up in a commune. And I've made a film, not private I would say, but very personal film, about living in a commune, and I'm looking forward to show you it. I'm very happy about it.
And I will be happy to see it.
Good, thank you. Was that it?
Yeah, perfect.
How my love slighted me.